You look so exotic.
You don't look like you're from there. Where are your parents from?
Why don't you look like your parents?
But where are you really from? What are you?
What are you?
What are you? What are you?
What are you?
What are you?
Words so familiar yet sharp, like the pain in the side after running a mile on a full stomach, like an old pocket knife, handle worn smooth in your hand, but still drawing blood after all these years. Well, I say, but already you are gone, turned on your heels, retreating to safe spaces. This is not what you wanted. You want a one-word answer, but friend, this is not a one-word story.
I feel like I became aware of my identity when I was in elementary school.
I was in elementary school.
Late elementary school, early middle school.
Probably in elementary school.
I remember in 3rd grade.
Then in 2nd grade.
When I was 9.
I wasn't like, oh my gosh, what am I? But like kids were curious and they would compare their skin tones and talk about things like that, and I was like curious about myself.
So there's this whole joke that like the pinky finger is the Chinese middle finger.
We had this big group of friends who would all we were like a bunch of white kids, black kids, like Latino kids, and we would all get together.
I just noticed that a lot of kids weren't Native American and that a lot of kids didn't know about it.
My 3rd grade teacher was talking about race, and we read a book or something, and she was white. And she was like, my skin color isn't the same as someone like Abby's, for example.
When I moved here from South Africa, I started getting asked those questions like, what are you? Where are you actually from? Like, where were you born? Where are your parents from?
And that's when I started getting all of those questions. What are you? Those are not really your parents, stuff like that.
And that's kind of when I was like, oh, let me talk to my parents and figure out what the deal is.
I didn't really think about it until people started doing it to me and were like, oh, this is your middle finger. This is like, you're different. Like, I was just like, that's...
As we got older, people started making comments about it. Like, not just to me, but to like other people. And it was just, oh, it wasn't bad. It was just like making comments. I was like, oh wait, I'm not exactly like everyone else.
I was aware that my dad was Colombian and that I was also Native American and white. But probably up until middle school, I just thought I was white.
3rd grade me was shook. I was so shocked. I was like, I'm not white? What? Because I never thought of myself as being different than the rest of my classmates.
And so that was again sort of reinforcing this idea of me as a mixed race child having to go through this like long winding path of figuring out like who I was and like what I was made up of ethnically.
I've always identified as being black and white. I always knew that my parents or my dad was black, my mom was white. But I didn't really think about what or why that was unique or different until I came to the US.
So I never really realized that it was me being Chinese was something really different.
And then I realized, oh no, I'm a little bit different.
And not all my classmates were white, but I didn't consider myself not white or not normal. So then I became aware, oh, I guess I'm tan. I guess that's different than other people.
And I didn't really think about it much until kind of in high school when those conversations became more prevalent.
But I've become a lot more aware of my racial identity in the past years.
I think growing up, I didn't really see myself as any other race. I don't think I thought I was white. I just thought I was oh, I'm just me, and then I think it's really made the past, especially 4 years in high school, just about me trying to find my identity.
I don't think I've necessarily reached that point where I'm 100% sure of everything having to do with my own identity, but I'm pretty comfortable with myself and my racial identity, and I think I learned it over time through different experiences.
The teenage years, the past few years have been a huge time of like figuring out who I am and who I want to be and how I want to present myself to people.
It's always been a tug between feeling like I don't belong in either group and feeling like I belong in both groups.
Most people assume I'm white, so they're like, oh, you fit into the white category. And I sometimes feel like there's racial division within the magnet or even just within high school, so I don't always like know where I fit in.
I think, you know, in school, like kids, it sucks, but kids do kind of separate themselves into groups based on race, whether it's like conscious or unconscious. And so those kids that are mixed race just feel like, what group do I go to?
Being mixed race, definitely I've grown up feeling kind of in between. Sometimes I feel like I'm not Indian enough or not Jewish enough, and that's definitely contributed to some insecurities.
Even within my family, I feel a little bit of an outsider. Like at family gatherings with the Vietnamese side, I don't speak the language, and me and my sister are the only ones who don't know what's going on. We have to ask for translations with our family. So either side of the family, there's like a little bit of a divide.
I've been kind of struggling to identify with my other cultures, just because I guess I just tried to fit in with everyone else, kind of.
We always have these kinds of ideas of, or these conversations of people of different races trying to assimilate into white culture.
It would be helpful for race to be viewed less categorically.
To not like emphasize the, oh, we're all the same, but actually appreciate the differences in race.
It's not always black and white. It's not always as obvious as people make it seem. You have to like talk about it from like a really informed, like inclusive perspective, not just like two sides.
There are a lot of intersections. There's also, you know, intersections with other aspects of identity that need to be incorporated. But in terms of mixed race, I think it's really important to include mixed race perspectives in any dialogue about race.
In talking about identity, I think it's really interesting because it's not just one box or one category. So it is sometimes hard to navigate that, and I think that has played a big part in me growing up.
The mixture of two different cultures entirely has definitely shaped how I am, and I feel like it's made me more well-rounded having such different cultures in my life.
You know, I can relate with a lot of my Asian peers in the magnet, but I can also relate with the other cultures that I'm part of and the cultures that I might not necessarily be part of, but I can understand how they might feel different in a certain situation, and I can relate to them in that way.
I think being mixed race and having such like rich cultures as a part of who I am and a part of my life, those have been things that I've celebrated, that I love to present to the world and to the people I love and to share with others, and it's part of myself that I really love.